As all this is happening on Capitol Hill, and it's fascinating to watch an actual negotiation debate start to begin, as incremental as it is, there are also other dynamics. So let's dig a little deeper into those inside this administration, because there are growing tensions between the president and military leaders. NBC News reported this week that General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, considered resigning for being part of President Trump's walk across Lafayette Square earlier this month. And this week, days ahead of the president's commencement address on Saturday at West Point, General Milley apologized for his role in the episode.
As many of you saw the result of the photograph of me at Lafayette Square last week, that sparked a national debate about the role of the military in civil society. I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics. As a commissioned, uniformed officer, it was a mistake that I have learned from, and I sincerely hope we all can learn from it.
But those tensions with President Trump extend to the Republican Party. There is growing unease, which I documented this week in the Washington Post with Phil Rucker. Conversations at the highest ranks of the party have reached what one veteran operative called the acceptance phase of grieving. And after weathering more than 3.5 years of political storms, they see no advantage in breaking with the president now. Ashley, what does your reporting tell you about how the president is responding to General Milley?
Well, I think you have to to look at it a bit more broadly. First, there is a lot of consternation in the White House about the military so publicly breaking with the president. Not just General Milley, but Defense Secretary Esper, who also said something similar. He first tried to claim that he didn't know where he was walking that day. He thought he was just checking out a porta potty, some damage to a porta potty in Lafayette Square, and reviewing the troops. And then he did say he did know he was going to the church, but he didn't realize he would be making a cameo in the president's photo op, and they were both furious, and there is a lot of consternation there. But I think the broader thing is you have to go back to that Monday night in Lafayette Square, where the president, he felt like he was being called weak and portrayed as hunkering down in his bunker. He wanted to show that he could regain control of the streets in the nation's capital, and he wanted to create an iconic moment, and he ended up he created a moment, but it wasn't quite as he intended. And people so rarely break with this administration publicly. We all get people who are willing to criticize the president, even from right in that West Wing sanctum, privately and, on background. But to have the military so publicly breaking for him was one ramification he was unprepared for. There was also the backlash, not purely, but some backlash from the religious community, who said that it was blasphemous for the president to go and hold up a Bible in what seemed to be a photo op, and the president, those images which he thought would make him seem so tough and so strong and so domineering, that split screen of the largely peaceful protests getting tear gassed or facing a chemical irritant shortly before his photo op, that just served to, again, harden public opposition to what he was doing and sort of move support away from his law and order push and to the protesters. So in many ways, he's still reeling from the aftermath of that one night that went down in basically under an hour.
Jake, where do Republicans go from here? You've been talking to them all week.
Well, I mean, as we've seen, I think, in various days and by various networks, Republicans have just basically decided, as we put it in Playbook, almost to just pat him on the head, President Trump, that is, and move on with their day. They're no longer really twisting themselves in pretzels to defend him. They're kind of just saying, we didn't see that, we don't have the information, we don't know what the tweet was, we don't know what he did here. And it's been remarkable to see, because we're getting to a point where every single day is a new one of these kinds of blow-ups, whether it's Milley or some other related incident or some tweet about Antifa, alleged Antifa foot soldier who's really a 75-year-old man from Buffalo. It's just been remarkable to kind of watch the Senate Republicans fighting for their majority, fighting for their control of their slice of Washington, to just say thank you, but no thank you. We're going to keep moving on and go into this lunch that we really don't have to be at right now, but we're going to do it to just avoid this question. So that's really the driving dynamic among Republicans.
Andrea, can you offer some thoughts on General Milley's statement? What a remarkable moment to see the top military official in the nation apologize for appearing with the president at a photo op.
He apparently, according to our reporting, he stayed up late that night on Monday night. He watched the criticism on social media. He was really mortified by it. It did violate the principles of the military staying out of politics, less so for Esper, who's a political appointee, although he was also a West Point graduate. Milley is a highly respected Joint Chiefs chair, but fairly new. He came in last fall to replace General Dunford, who was really a real soldier. But Milley has great reputation. And in talking to Barry McCaffrey and interviewing him about this today, he thought that this was a really remarkable statement for him to make. And it did show an independence from this president that is remarkable, as Ashley knows very well, that people do not stand up to him. So there was a considerable anger against him from the president for taking that statement. The president made it very clear today that he did not, in an interview, that he did not think that that photo opportunity in front of the church was bad, as Milley had said. So he did not agree with him, but he did not strike out on Twitter against him. I think the indication was that he could not fire a defense secretary, which he had suggested doing, Secretary Esper, after he stepped back from the president on this, and certainly could not do something against such a highly respected military officer. But this is a real moment, because it's not just Milley and others. There was a long list of others, including Jim Mattis, who had not spoken out against this president, even though resigning, and everyone knew about the differences. But there were so many others who spoke out, Admiral Mullen and others included.
Wes, just some final thoughts here in the final minute. I know you wanted to jump in.
Sure. Of course. You know, one thing I just wanted to add from the politics, right, as someone who's listening to the great reporting from this panel, and they're all more talented political reporters than I'll ever be. One thing I'm really fascinated in is Tim Scott in this moment, the role he has to play, and the role he does play in the Republican Party, being placed in this position, the way he's tried to handle these issues previously. One of the first stories I ever did for the Washington Post was right after he arrived, and he was doing a series of speeches at Howard. He's talked about how entering the Capitol building, he's been questioned before about whether he belongs there. You'll remember after Charlottesville, he confronted President Trump. It's unquestionably probably a lonely position for him. He is the only black senator in the GOP. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the role he plays moving forward.